The dealer quoted $6,000 to fix this Honda. Let's check it out. This is what we'll be checking out today, a 2019 Honda HR-V. Now, the current owner of this vehicle bought this thing brand new from a Honda dealer, so they're the only ones that have ever owned this vehicle. And they've only taken it for service to a Honda dealer. It's never been in an accident or anything like that. So basically, anytime they needed oil changes or whatnot, they would take it to the dealer. Now, and I believe they've only, had oil changes, and I think they did rear shocks on this thing and new tires a few months ago. So basically, this thing has only had oil changes, and it's only been done at the dealer. And the current mileage is 63,900 and something. So the complaint on this vehicle, and the reason it went to the dealer, is AC blowing hot air. I believe over a couple months it was diminished, so it would still work, but it didn't seem to be working quite as well. It would take longer to cool the car down than normal. And then one day the owner was taking a long trip. I think it was about an hour drive, fired up the AC, and it never cooled off. It never did anything but blow hot air. So the next day, or maybe 2 days later, they took it to the dealer and asked the dealer to diagnose, AC blowing hot air. And so let's go look and see what the dealer found. So the dealer charged the owner a $150 diagnostic fee and did their little multi-point inspection. And I have no problem with the diagnostic fee, nothing wrong with that. There was some personal information up here, but I chopped that off. So let's look at their little inspection report. So our brakes look all good. We're looking for green check marks. Tires are good. Battery good. And if we look at all the stuff over here, it looks like we're green check marks everywhere. Yep, on everything except for heating and air conditioning, visual inspection. It says components failed and contaminated system. Recommend replacing AC compressor, condenser, expansion valve, and performing AC flush. And if we look at page 2, we can see right here, compressor is internally failed. Recommend compressor, condenser, and expansion valve, just like we read on the first page, with AC flush for $6,059.64. Now that's a number where I think we need to do a thumbnail where I look something like this. And if we read the rest of this stuff, we got services due: major service for $812, a fuel system service for $434, a drive belt for $325. I would hope if you did the compressor, they would at least throw that drive belt in for only the cost of the belt and not charge you the whole amount. And a rear differential service. So the rest of these look like your normal service items they're recommending. But if we add them all up, I mean, that's what, I don't know what that is, but that's over $7,500 it looks like for service on a 6-year-old car. Obviously most of it being a repair of over $6,000. So this is the reason the owner called me, not so much for this stuff. They're like, hey, what is this about? Well, let's check this thing out, see what's going on. Let's do a quick visual inspection under the hood. Well, first thing I noticed, it looks like this vehicle's been doing some off-roading. Now, I really don't think it has been, but it's definitely pretty dirty. I'm not sure if you can tell on the camera, but there's a lot of dirt and dust and everything in here. But anyway, well, first things first, we want to make sure our belt is on, and so that looks okay. And there's our AC compressor way down there, so just a quick visual inspection. I don't see anything amiss right there. And what I did, it looks like somebody's been here. Yeah, I would say. That's not supposed to be like that. Looks like we're missing a ton of clips. Miraculously, they have where probably you would lift this up to look at the condenser maybe. I don't know. But it seems awfully suspicious that we're missing everything there. Another thing we want to make sure is our coolant level. We do not want to be running the vehicle low on coolant. That can affect our AC. And is that really empty? Let's check that out further. I'm not seeing anything in that bottle. Nothing. Not a drop. Let's check the radiator. And well, it's definitely low. I mean, I don't see any coolant right there. So that's a problem. They didn't indicate that on their little thing, did they? Let's check it out. Where's coolant? No, coolant looks perfect. So unless this thing just had a big coolant leak between the time they looked at it and the time I got it, which I think it's been about a week, they definitely missed that one. And I should mention, this vehicle's cold, it sat overnight, so we wouldn't want to be opening that up if it was hot. So I'm not seeing anything weird under the hood, so let's go ahead and start it up and see what the AC is doing. Alright, fired it up. Let's turn things on and see what it does. Oh, can you hear that? Well, that doesn't sound good, not at all. The compressor's on and it's engaged, but it sounds horrible. Alright, let's just go ahead and turn our AC off for now. Ooh, that does not sound good. Now when I turned the AC off, the sound went away, so I do believe our clutch is working. It sounds like it's engaging and disengaging like it's supposed to, but when it's engaged, it's obviously making an obnoxious racket. I don't know how well you could hear that on the video there, how well it came across, but it definitely sounds to me like our compressor has failed. Now I did see a little bit of a video that the tech actually took, and on the video what they said is they did recover the refrigerant and they swabbed. I don't know where they swabbed. They just said they swabbed and found stuff, you know, gray stuff on the Q-tip, indicating, you know, what we're thinking is that the compressor has failed internally and has blown crap through the system. That's very feasible, and that's highly likely, in fact. But what I thought was interesting is on that video they also said that they recovered 0.48 kilograms of refrigerant, when if we look at the sticker, where is it? This takes 0.445. So it was a little bit overcharged, and I can tell you that the owner has not recharged this. Nobody else has recharged it. So, I mean, did it come overcharged from the factory? I don't know. But obviously, if you run an AC system, especially ones that are this small, if you run them overcharged, it can definitely damage the compressor. So that's definitely a possibility. Now, because the compressor engaged, it does appear that we do have refrigerant inside the system, but we don't know how much. They did tell the owner that they put the refrigerant back in after they recovered it, did their diagnosis. They said they put the refrigerant back in, but we don't know how much. We don't know if it's 0.48 like they recovered, or if they put the correct amount back in, which is 0.445. So let's go ahead and hook up the machine and do some checks. And this system takes R1234YF refrigerant, so we need equipment capable of working on this. I'm waiting for the unit to do a leak test, and I just wanted to point out, when refrigerant has already acclimated to its environment, like this machine's been sitting in the shop, we can look at our pressure temperature chart and we should be pretty close to what it says here. So right now it's 78.4 degrees in the shop, so we're right here. So our pressure on our gauges for our refrigerant should be about 86. We come over here and I'm going to say we're about 84. So that's pretty darn close. Alright, I got the gauges hooked up. If we come over here and look at our pressure, we know we should be roughly 86 degrees, 85, 86, and we're right there on both of them, the high and the low. So our system, at least initially, just looking at this, our rest pressures look good. Alright, I'm going to turn on the vehicle and I'm just going to activate the AC briefly. Of course, it's going to make a bunch of noise, but I want to see what it does to our high and low pressures. I suspect it's not going to do much at all. Might drop it a little bit on the low and might raise it on the high, barely, but honestly I suspect that it's almost going to stay where it is. Houston, we have noise. You can see we barely dropped. We barely moved at all. We're not doing much of anything, which is consistent with a failed compressor. So I'm going to turn it off. Now, I'm not worried about running the system just for a few seconds, because the owner was running this for a long time with a, you know, what appears to be a failing compressor. And so it's one of those where you know, if you knew the compressor was failing, you wouldn't want to run it. Just shut it off and get it replaced. Obviously, the longer you run it, the more chance you take of sending contamination, basically small pieces of metal, fine little pieces of metal throughout the system. And any place the metal goes, we typically have to either clean or replace. And so that's where these, you know, repairs get really expensive, is having to chase where all the crap went and got to clean it up. We recovered 0.167 kilograms of refrigerant and 4 milliliters of oil. And we can see at 0.167 kilograms, that's not even close to what the max spec says on this is 0.445 kilograms. So either we have a huge leak or the dealer didn't put all the refrigerant back in. I sat here for a few minutes watching the gauges, and of course we're still under a vacuum. And if we had a leak large enough to lose nearly all of our refrigerant in less than a week, I'm pretty certain we would have seen this needle move and we'd start to lose our vacuum. But this thing has not moved one bit, so I'm pretty certain that we don't have a leak and the dealer just didn't recharge it back to the full amount. Alright, I'm going to remove these and shut my machine down. Alright, if we look at our AC lines, we have a larger diameter one and a smaller diameter one. This larger one is going to be our low side. If you forget, it's got an L right there for low. And this one, of course, is our high pressure side, and it has an H. So if we follow our low pressure hose, it comes over here and it goes right down to our compressor right there. So that's going to be the suction side. That's sucking it from the evap. And then, hopefully you can see right over there, I'm not sure if you can see it. Let me see if I can get a better view. Right there at the tip of my flashlight right there, that is the discharge line, or the high pressure line. And it's going to come over right here up to our condenser. Hopefully you can see that right there. So in a perfect situation, we would pull that bolt off because we don't have any more refrigerant in the system, so we can disconnect it now. But we pull that bolt off, pull that line off, and check for contamination right there. If we look at the bottom of our condenser, I don't know if you can see it, but the line coming out is down there. And it goes over here, and then this is it right here. So this is our high pressure line right here coming off of our condenser. And it comes right here, just what we're looking at. So to make it easier on ourselves, I typically always replace the condenser if I'm going to do a compressor. In this case, it looks like we're replacing a compressor. So I'd for sure do the condenser, so I'm really not worried about looking for contamination right there. But I do want to see if contamination made it past our condenser and past our receiver driver, which I believe on this model is over here attached to our condenser. But I want to see if the contamination made it past that and made it back to our evaporator and our expansion valve. So the easiest way to do it, why not just disconnect it right here and make things easier on ourselves? Alright, got a couple of wrenches, 17 and 19 millimeters. Let's see if we can't get that apart and check for contamination. Make sure your refrigerant is recovered. You do not want to do this and open up the system with refrigerant still in there. I want to say that's contaminated. I put that back together and I'm trying to take this line apart, and ooh, this does not feel good. I can back it out. Come on, I can back it out to about right there, and ooh, that's tight. I hope they didn't cross thread this. It sure feels like it, or it's pulling all the threads out. I did spray a little penetrating oil on the backside. I don't think it's going to help. I have a feeling it's tearing everything up in there. well, I did what I could, but these little bolts don't take much. So either it was pulling all the threads out or somebody cross-threaded it in there. Alright, so let's check out what we got. Hopefully you can see the contamination there. So these are the swabs from our high side line right there. So for sure we know that this line is contaminated, coming from our condenser going back to our expansion valve and the evap. Alright, now here are the swabs from our low side. They're not as bad as the high side, but they're contaminated nonetheless. Hopefully you can see it. This one, it's a little harder to see on the camera. Maybe you can tell when I put a brand new one next to it. Hopefully you can see that. But nevertheless, we definitely have contamination on our low side coming back to the compressor. So it appears our entire system is contaminated. And to top it off, we have a broken bolt in this line right here. And if we look at our two lines here, you can see they come back here and then they merge right there. And then they come apart again. Hopefully you can see it right there, and goes down over to our expansion valve and our evap. This is just kind of a thing they do on YF vehicles to make them a little more efficient, basically to make them work better. Alright, the dealer was nice enough to give us a vehicle repair estimate. So there is our $150 vehicle diagnosis. And then here's our parts breakdown. So this part right here is going to be for our compressor. So for the parts for the compressor, we don't know the individual ones, but total it's like $2,671. So there's our majority of the money, is just simply replacing our compressor, and then $771 for labor. And then when you add tax, you're talking $3,659 just for the compressor. That's just to replace the compressor. Oh, and a couple O-rings. We look right here. Here's our condenser. So we have the condenser and our two O-rings. The parts for that, $280. Labor, $596. Now they're showing evac and recharge on all these. We only need to do evac or recover, evac, and recharge one time. So we definitely don't need to do it 3 times. So I don't know if they split it up between the 3 or if they're trying to stagger it. Who knows? I don't know. But right here we have our expansion valve. So we got the expansion valve and our O-rings. That's $148 plus $401 for labor. And over here we got refrigerant. It's not really Freon. That's not the trade name for 1234YF. What is it? I forgot. Hang on, let me check. So there are the trade names for the two major manufacturers that make it, Chemours and Honeywell. We got Solstice and Opteon. So it's not Freon. And continuing on, we got 2 valves, and then we got 1 AC flush. The MT0059, I'm not sure if that's correct for this vehicle. I think that's only for 134 vehicles, but hey, maybe it works for both. I don't know. But anyway, the parts for these are $189 and $405 labor. So our grand total over here is $5,730. And then the super grand total is $588 or $5,880.21, and that is including our $150 diagnostic fee. So really that would be the number right there. I'm not sure why that's different than our other estimate of just over $6,000, but that's that. And then of course other jobs they want the rear diff, coolant. Hey, look at they recommend changing the coolant, and brake fluid for another $549. So now you know a detailed breakdown of where they're getting their prices from, and most of it is for that the compressor right there. Okay, if my math is right, I went ahead and added up everything. So for the parts, we're at $3,289.63. For labor, we're at $2,174.10. Add tax at $266.48, and that's where our grand total of $5,730.21 is. And then we have to add our $150 diag. Now, before I looked at this car, I had seen this little estimate here, and so I was curious how much could I get the parts for. The same exact parts that are listed in here, I went and got prices from my parts guy at the Honda dealer. And so here they all are right here. Now I think I might have one more O-ring listed on here than they do, but it's close enough. So we got our compressor, our clutch, stator, condenser, expansion valve, and a bunch of O-rings. Now, if you didn't know, Honda AC compressors, when they're brand new, or if you buy them and they're brand new, you have to get the compressor, the clutch, and the stator separate. If it's a reman unit from Honda, you get these all together, but there are no reman units available for this vehicle yet, so you have to buy it new, and you got to buy all three of these. If you want to do it right, you should buy all three. I wouldn't reuse the old ones. So in this case, we would have to buy all this, plus the condenser, expansion valve, the O-rings. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean this is how I'm going to fix it, but I wanted to compare prices between this and what we got over here on our quote. So this line right here, this is my cost. So if I went and down to the Honda shop and my parts guy, this is how much he'd sell everything to me for right here. And this is the grand total. So it's $19.85. That was a great year. And 60 cents plus tax equals $2,158.35. So that's what my cost is right there. And of course I could mark it up like 10%. So $215, and so that's what I could sell it for, about $2,400 or something like that, which would get us close to our list. So here is our list prices right here. So if we look, there's the list price for everything, and I went ahead and added all that up for us, and there it is right there, $2,481.99. That's the list price for all these parts, everything that was listed on here, plus or minus one O-ring. Now here's our super duper price, and this is the one, like if we're selling service to a little old lady or something like that, or we need to make sure we have ice cream for people in the lobby. Here's the price we got to charge right here. So this is our super duper upsale price, and there is the price right there for all that, $2,802.11 if I added it all up correctly. So if we compare our prices, the price I can pay, the list price, and our super markup price, we compare it to the parts over here, well, they're really proud of those. I mean, that's really super duper marked up at $32.89 compared to, it's even about $400 higher than our super markup price. So I just wanted to give you a comparison of how much this dealership is charging versus the parts that I can get. Now, to be fair, our prices over here do not include these items here because these are not Honda parts. So we would have to subtract $189.41 from our super duper price quote in order to compare apples to apples. But if we look at this stuff, AC flush is about $45 a gallon, and it probably wouldn't take much more than a gallon, honestly, to flush this small system. We would need a couple of JRA valves. We can, call that 20 bucks for two of those because we can't buy them from Honda. We would have to buy them aftermarket. Or you have to buy the line that these are installed in, because they do come with the line from Honda, but you'd have to buy the entire line. And then refrigerant, by their own video, they showed that they recovered enough refrigerant to recharge the system, because these machines will recycle the refrigerant and it can be reused. So we don't need to charge extra for the same refrigerant that we recovered. You can charge them for the service of doing it, but we don't have to actually charge them for actual refrigerant when we recovered 100% pure 1234YF, and that showed in their video. It was not cross-contaminated. If it's cross-contaminated, then that's understandable. We would have to charge for refrigerant because we would not be able to reuse it, but in this case they recovered the correct amount. In fact, they recovered a little bit extra, and it was 100% pure. Now in our case, we did not recover enough to recharge the system, so I would have to charge a little bit for refrigerant, which would probably be about $75. So now you know the cost for that, and we can add that to our prices over here. Here's a shot of our broken bolt. You can see where the threads were seized on there. It did not want to come out. I mean, this bolt had become part of that line right there. It wanted to stay. I did end up fixing those threads. Super easy, they said. Just pull the bolt out and check for contamination. Now, why are these compressor failures so expensive to fix? Well, when they fail, fine little particles of metal mixed in with some other things that the compressors are made of combines with really overheated refrigerant oil, and it mixes throughout the whole system, and it creates, a gray or a black goo or sludge throughout the whole system. That stuff has to be cleaned up, either by replacing components or flushing them. Some components can be flushed, some have to be replaced. And so that's where it gets really expensive when you're dealing with all the components in an AC system like this one, where everything appears to be contaminated. So now I hope you know a little bit more about that. Now, what would you do if this was your vehicle and you got a $6,000 repair? What would you do? Would you put brand new Honda parts in there that are really expensive and that failed too soon, in my opinion? Would you go aftermarket, where right now, as of today, there's not a lot of parts available aftermarket? There are some, but not the usual selection that I'm used to seeing when I go to buy parts. So what do? Aftermarket, dealer, who knows? And anyway, I want to hear what you think down in the comments. And as always, if the video helped you out or you liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.